Sonic Universe Issue 62 Reboot. We start out with Shadow challenging Death. Why doesn't he instantly win? He can move at the speed of sound, freeze time, and teleport. And we don't see Black Death tell him that you're in my world, you go by my rules. Only Eclipse did, and it made sense because Eclipse was another ultimate life form. So why doesn't he use Chaos Control on him? Surely he could teleport him to the sun, or beat him to death during frozen time. I'm left to just assume he still can't use Chaos Control even though Eclipse isn't here, or that he assumes he still can't use it and it's wrong just because he's on the Black Comet. But that still leaves his super speed. Black Death is a sitting duck who shouldn't be fast enough to react to what he's doing. And he's not a robot with tough metal skin, he's an organic being, so one hit would kill him. Even his green fire or chaos spear would kill him. Well, I'm sure there were rings in the Black Comet level of Shadow the Hedgehog, so I guess he does have rings. So I guess this fight will just be punches with the cool looking attacks all missing to keep this kid friendly. And what can this guy do? Fly and brainwash, if he happens to put his hand on his head in time. This is not even close to an even matchup, so I'm expecting a lot of boring padding. Shadow plays the semantics game by saying that Black Doom didn't give him life, just his genes. That by definition means he has given him life. The dialogue should have been, Black Doom was your father, and he would respond, the professor is my real father, when was Black Doom ever around? Maybe I'll brainwash Shadow again for a tense climax, but that'd just be repetition. But it makes no sense to never happen. He doesn't say he's giving up on brainwashing Shadow. He just seems to forget. He sends fireballs at Shadow. Wait, he can do that? How is he not the leader instead of Black Doom? Granted, I don't remember Black Doom very well because I never played the game. Maybe he did have magical wizard powers other than Chaos Control even before he went super. He did have the ability to throw fireballs at Shadow, actually. I mean, his boss fight where Shadow killed him at the end would be pretty boring if all he did was punch Shadow. But still, this fire rock magic came completely out of nowhere. What else can he do? At least now I know where the Black Arms get their fuel source for all the indoor lighting. He creates the fire for them with magic. That won't be explained because that means the writer cared. He sends a laser in front of him as he says what he already said to Shadow earlier, and expects him to care this time. He asks what gives Shadow the right to judge the Black Arms, somehow missing the fact that they want to invade a planet and eat everyone in it. Shadow looks stupid here, spitting out smoke. There are better ways to draw a character being exhausted or relieved that he dodged some fire. Why is Shadow doing nothing but dodging attacks? He'd already be on him punching his lights out by now. Why doesn't he just tackle him and smack his head to knock him out? He takes off his inhibitor rings, and I'm supposed to completely take this seriously as a badass, satisfying the reason you suck speech when he's just stating the obvious. And I'm just wondering why he has to tell him this. How does he not know his species are all monsters? Shouldn't he know that he would never want to be eaten himself? And so obviously people would think it's evil to eat people? Shadow should have gotten attacked in all the time he was spending saying those sentences. Then he surrounds himself with fire like he's Blaze all of a sudden. I thought his fire was only green, to look otherworldly and cool. Unless he was boosting like in Sonic Generations. Wouldn't non-green fire be less hot and therefore less impressive? He's not wearing his rings here. At least it makes sense that he's not being interrupted because he's surrounded by fire. And it's cheesy that he says Maria instead of Gerald's granddaughter, since he's talking to a stranger who wouldn't know or care who Maria is. It's weird of Shadow to be cheesy. And why is he wasting time telling him this? Just kill him already. The scene is boring. Why is it dragging out for so long? He's already God mode, so all the tension is gone. Why didn't he do this before going to challenge him? I know he had to wait until the final battle on the Black Comet because it'd be useless to the rest of the mission if he was completely tired out for it. But he was coming to face someone who just effortlessly brainwashed him. You'd think he'd start the fight out like this. It was already obvious to the audience from the start that he had to win, and Black Death didn't even have a chance of hurting him. In fact, he didn't even get to punch Shadow. There's no reason not to draw that. It's cathartic for people who don't like the character, and it makes the tension feel more legitimate because the villains are competent. Then the scene cuts away to the boring human soldiers reuniting with the ones who weren't captured by the aliens. So only 3 of the soldiers didn't get captured. And the focus should be on Shadow, but instead we get what happened last issue recapped, just in case the people reading this didn't read the previous issue. Why can't the comic just have recap pages before the panels that text recapping what they need to know? Oh right, because they know that no one will read it. Well, the problem is, Andrews is just telling them all stuff we don't need to know anymore for the plot happening now to make sense. Bad guys fighting Shadow. That's all this plot is. What was he thinking putting the scene in? We had complaints in the Shadow the Hedgehog game that there were scenes entirely focusing on human characters we didn't care about. Like the President and the Gun Commander. This is doing the same thing. Rouge can't get info from Shadow anymore. At least the Black Comet is colored more than just one color throughout. It's better than just being black throughout. I bet that was taken from the game too, but I'm glad it has some visual variety. But art doesn't really matter. I like that Omega's jealous because Shadow got to fight Black Death. That made this waste of a panel worth it. They fortunately find the nuke in the very next panel. I'm willing to bet it won't be that easy because Eclipse was sent after them, and that's the cliche. They get lured over to what they want when it's out in the open, and oh good, at least Rouge has more than one brain cell. She does recognize as a setup. So did the female characters in that one episode of Sonic X. But they'll have a better excuse for falling for it anyways, because they had to get the bomb right now. I also like that Omega says, good, let them come. And thinks it's excellent that Eclipse and a giant alien are in front of them. But where are they hiding? They just entered stage right. Rouge just said it was out in the open unguarded. Eclipse somehow waited until now at the start of a battle to tell the alien to fight the robot, while he will fight Rouge. What kind of a military leader are you? And he also looks ridiculous because he trails off. There's way too much trailing off telegraphing the next panel in this arc. Oh, he got interrupted because he screamed flying away while Omega blasted the alien. So he screamed because he was cowardly, not because he got hit. And he could fly behind him immediately, explaining why Omega didn't have the time. Never mind. Omega should have blasted him in the time he was wasting giving battle instructions. How did that not backfire on him? Omega has 2 arms. He could have hit both of them just fine. I'm assuming this immediately killed the alien, because why wouldn't it? He's an organic. He got hit with explosions. Why did Eclipse ever think he had a chance? What an idiot. I just remembered, Eclipse has chaos control. How in the hell is he not instantly winning? He could teleport them all to the sun, or teleport the body parts away from their torso, or freeze time to just hit them with his fist. Instead, the giant alien topples over on top of him, and he whines that it wasn't supposed to be like this. That's right, it wasn't. To be fair, I wouldn't want to see him win either, so he is supposed to lose. I guess there's no way his loss could not be humiliating, since he has absolutely no excuse for losing. But he could have at least gotten a few hits in. But then I'd be questioning why he didn't use Chaos Control as his first attack, so he'd still look like an idiot. This is why you can't give Chaos Control to a murderous villain character. And again, I feel sorry for him. Then he whines like a spoiled brat not getting his own way, so I don't. Now it kind of makes sense that Omega said amused, because he was portrayed with a robotic monotone of some kind in the games. Except in Sonic Heroes, he at least has some inflection and a better voice, so they should have stuck with that. And more importantly, there's no actual reason that he would still speak in monotone at this point. Even if Eggman made him that way out of laziness because he's just a killing machine, you think someone would have, I guess not even Gun cares. And that makes sense. I think they're just using him. My point is, I don't remember him ever saying query and concern and stuff before the reboot. So the reboot made his dialogue worse. With Eclipse's eyes closed, he really looks like a recolored Knuckles. But again, basic continuity is completely ignored, because he suddenly goes from trapped under a giant alien to standing still holding Omega's hands back. This is stupid. You cannot waste panels and then not use a panel to show how he got to this point. I assumed he'd stay under that alien the whole time. In fact, his legs and arms should be broken at this point. Omega at least lampshades that he's being weak, and stupidly tells him to throw a Chaos Spear or do a Chaos Blast. 1, that's tempting fate since this fight just started, and 2, why does he bother saying this when he's holding his hands so he can't do that? I wasn't told that he'd need his hands free to Chaos Blast though. So telling the villain to do his cheap one-hit KO move was pretty dumb. Was the fire around Shadow supposed to be Chaos Blast? Because I thought Chaos Blast was supposed to be red light around him. It's confusing that Eclipse has 2 big toes. That's almost the only part of him that looks alien. And he's not an alien, he's a robot. But yeah, if he did a Chaos Blast, there would be no excuse for Omega surviving. Or not even getting damaged. I'll just have to assume he has rings, when it's not stated. Rouge thinks she's being smart by telling him to stop toying with it and just set the bomb and get out of here. First of all, she's calling a person an it. I don't care if Eclipse is a robot and a bad guy, she's being an asshole. At least the Death's eye is an organic being that's an extension of Black Death. So its body has no actual gender. Granted, Eclipse chose no gender either, but I'm sure his voice is male, and he's still shaped like a person. So I'm sure he'd identify as male anyways. Basically, she's being a hypocrite because she's calling him out on being a sadist to a complete monster. Somehow sympathizing with Eclipse, but at the same time, she's calling him an it, which was jarring. Does she call Omega an it too? I doubt it. More importantly, if she was really smart, she would have set the bomb while saying this. Or at least been punching Eclipse helping Omega out. Instead, she does nothing but stand there with her arms crossed during a battle. Why is she even saying this? What the fuck? If Eclipse can surround himself with greenness and knock away Omega, what took him so long? Out of nowhere again, what I thought was a mere robot because of his text bubble and eyes, reveals that he can morph to have a more muscular alien body. So was he a robot or not? At least he didn't already get humiliatingly defeated. But that doesn't make up for the fact that happening to him had made no sense. And if he was really competent, he would have been like this the entire time. If he had metamorphic abilities that could make him stronger, why wasn't he always like this? And why didn't he tell Shadow he could do that right away to brag and prove he was better? There was no reason to have this come out of nowhere. It's not nearly impressive enough to work as a final form that you have to save until the end. He's not exactly a giant. And again, we weren't told how he was made. It's not like he was made to be the cure to all illnesses to save a dying girl like Shadow was. Which was originally supposed to be the purpose of the ultimate life form before Shadow the Hedgehog showed up. So I don't know how he has this power and Shadow doesn't when he has chaos energy infused in him too. And yet Eclipse isn't super speedy. So Shadow's much better than him despite being made earlier. Huh? I guess Gerald really was the extra step that made him better. Also, there's no reason for Eclipse to not be trying to punch the heroes while he's bragging about himself. As if the fight scene wasn't stupid enough, Rouge and Omega are allowed to go on a long story planning their next move against Eclipse, while he just politely stands there and waits for the conversation to end. I don't remember Archie Sonic abusing talking as a free action nearly this much. Rouge says out of complete nowhere that transforming like this might burn out Eclipse's metabolism. What metabolism? I thought he was a robot. Wasn't that why she called him an it? If he was a cyborg, he should have said that all along and been called the cyborg. If he's the ultimate alien life form, well, I guess the life part should have made it obvious he was a robot. But that's why his robotic eyes and voice suck. Because then he should have been called the ultimate cyborg or something. And we already saw Shadow be called the ultimate life form. And I just saw his title as him being a rip-off of Shadow, not something to be taken literally. But yeah, Rouge doesn't need to tell Omega to keep fighting him. They could have found out on their own that he was tiring himself out from the fight. Which doesn't need to be because he made himself tougher. This is just repeating what happened to Super Scourge, except without all the emeralds. Rouge announces that she's arming the nuke, but what took her so long, and why doesn't she get interrupted after she clearly said she'd do this? Finally, Omega tackles Eclipse, who punches him, but I didn't see the impact of his fist with him, so who cares? What could be one of the biggest appeals of the Sonic franchise is that it's an action series, and so even if you hate the characters, you'll always get to look forward to seeing them get hit. But you can't even get that most of the time, so what's the point? Rouge presses a button on the nuke and tells the shuttle with a distractingly gibberish name that she needs the activation code to arm the nuclear device. First off, Her finger looks as big as all the tiny square buttons combined. So that art sucked. How could she possibly type in the activation code with buttons that small? Even her pink nails would be too big to press them. Oh yeah, I just remembered. Rouge's prototype name was Nails. She even has a picked nails upgrade in SA2. So we have to be able to see her nails for that to make sense. If I'm remembering right, why does she not have to wear gloves but Sally does? I guess because she has white fur, so it fits because her hands already look like gloves. If she is wearing gloves, then how would she use her nails to dig and stuff? Anyways, I think the name of the shuttle was made by mashing keys on a keyboard and then going to add vowels afterwards. Or maybe it's a derivative reference I don't get. Either way, he should have given it a good name. It's a minor thing, but if you're gonna have the name be so bad, what was the point of even giving it a name at all instead of just calling it the shuttle? It's obviously distracting during a serious situation. Nobody even made fun of it. At least with Operation Triage, it is a real thing in the military to use names for operations that don't tell you what the operation's about because it's supposed to be a secret code name for it. Even if I don't know what the word triage means. I would prefer to use a word that people understood in that case. Like, I don't know, Operation Duck. So at least you could be trying to be silly and charming and make it immediately clear that it's not supposed to mean anything. It makes sense that she'd only be given the activation code here because there's no way she would have remembered it that long. But the activation code is nonsensical. The numbers make sense, but why is there Ciara in uniform there? Even I know that nuclear launch codes are just made of numbers. It doesn't look like there are nearly enough buttons on the bomb to have all the letters on it. There should be a keyboard at least. And more importantly, if the aliens cared so much about keeping the bomb from being activated on the comet, wasn't it common sense to severely damage the buttons so that Rouge wouldn't have been able to use them? After all, they could just fix the buttons later, when they'll have actually reached the planet. And how does Rouge know she'll be able to make it to the shuttle within 10 minutes? She's not that familiar with the Black Comet too. And again, why isn't Eclipse attacking her? She's obviously the biggest priority because he screamed no at the prospect of the bomb going off. It would have made sense if we saw Omega holding him still, like being on top of him. Focusing entirely on Omega, who's just the distraction, is incredibly stupid, especially right after Rouge clearly announced what she was going to do. I hate it when characters are deaf just because they're off screen. Instead of being remotely realistic, Eclipse doesn't even seem to notice his mistake and just talks like a cartoon villain, inexplicably bragging that his people have consumed countless worlds, and still didn't think that they should get a more practical way of getting food. Don't they realize they're gonna run out of food? How many inhabitable planets are there in their universe? How long have the Black Arms been around as a species? They must have known how to find and eat food needed to their planet before they started traveling space in a comet that they must have modified with science to have air, ventilation, heat, and lighting in it, which cavemen couldn't do. I'm not even being told how long it takes for the Black Arms to consume one planet. They'd all starve to death if it took too long for them to get what they needed to eat after they ate everything in a small area they were at. And I can't imagine he means literally, because how could they have literally consumed planets, and not just all the life forms on it? They couldn't eat rocks and soil. My point is, there must have been some point in their earlier history when they weren't consuming entire planets, and now they're endangered. So why the hell didn't they just return to their home planet? Is it completely devoid of life for them to eat by now? Still? I guess so, and that's why they started all traveling in a comet with no one remaining on the planet. They're like Kirby, but evil, because they somehow ate so much that they need to eat countless planets' worth to not starve. Wouldn't population control be enacted long before any species of intelligent life would get to such a desperate point? They're ruled by an evil dictator. He wouldn't be above that. There's a beeping sound in front of Rouge that the panel tells me nothing. Somehow Eclipse is still bragging about himself, hitting him with no actual impact shown, instead of panicking at the bomb being activated. I guess even the Black Arms weren't stupid enough to risk attacking the bomb and trying to damage it beyond repair, because that might just release radiation and kill them anyways. But you'd think that if they're advanced enough to have a comet with a breathable atmosphere and proper gravity, they'd have bomb diffusers on their comet somewhere that could take apart the nuke safely. We weren't even shown any of them working on the nuke when the heroes showed up. I guess all their bonded fuses were killed by Shadow last time. Fine. Except they could teach more people to do that. Did Omega shoot his face with no reaction from him? Well, now he's shown hitting him properly, but his dialogue is just over-the-top, vengeful cartoon villain. He might as well have been portrayed this way all along. It doesn't make any sense that he would mean it when he says he'll burn his planet to a cinder, because he needs life forms alive to give the Dark Arms the best nutrition. He said that himself. And I'm sure that applies to the rest of the Black Arms too. I guess he means that he'll burn it after his species have eaten all the food there. But if his species really are nearing extinction, he should know that'll never happen in his lifetime. So it's an empty threat. I always assumed he was just trying to intimidate him. If his species reproduced and grew up too fast, then they wouldn't be still endangered after Shadow destroyed a black comet. It still came out of nowhere to me that he got tired and passed out. In fact, I forgot that would be a plot point because I was so distracted by all the plot holes. Rouge hadn't been written to predict this would happen when it was a Deus Ex Machina. Rouge at least tries to balance out his tougher form by saying he can't maintain it for long, but that makes absolutely no sense. It's not like it's a super form. At least Omega is shown to have some damage, and the text bubble shows he has trouble speaking. So for once, the villain had actual impact fighting a hero in this series. I bet it'll be fine the next issue that we see him in though. And that would make sense because he'd just get repaired. He's a robot, this was easy. It'd require real guts to have Rouge or Shadow be bruised up. There's so many little things wrong with this arc that they all add up to one big thing. Omega says he can still take him. Of course he can. But Rouge tells him to leave, just hoping he'll stay exhausted long enough that the bomb will finish him off. We finally see Shadow flying towards Black Death surrounded in fire. How's he not flying right through him? That would kill him instantly, but somehow his eyes are all still glowing. And why are they still glowing? I guess because Eclipse is contacting him? He looks pathetic and warns him about the bomb and at least explains that he doesn't know what to do with it. Panels are wasted as the characters just stare at each other instead of attacking each other for no reason. Shadow tells Rouge that the bomb could still be disrupted by the Black Arms, and when Black Death goes down, so will the Hive Mind. So he's gonna have to stay here and buy time for an Omega. I'm guessing she'll be another Sally and have no faith in him to survive this when he survived SE2. Yup, she's an idiot. He has Sonic speed, moron. I'm pretty sure he'll beat him and escape in time. It'd be completely and utterly stupid if it didn't happen. Although I can kind of understand her concern because he almost died once. So anytime that he might almost die again, she might be worried about it actually happening for real. But she's not Sally, she's Rouge. Seriously, why doesn't Black Death try to brainwash him again? He's just standing there and politely letting them finish their conversation. You'd think Shadow and him would be punching each other the entire time, but we're past logic at this point because Black Death shouldn't even still be alive. There's a sappy moment because Rouge says she's not leaving him behind again because she cares about him for no actual reason. And Shadow says he's returning the favor because she went out of her way to save him. I forget, when did she do that? Is this arc that forgettable? Oh right, he meant that she talked him out of brainwashing. That didn't save him. He still would have been alive, the bomb never would have blown up. Oh yeah, I forgot. She saved him because she took the time to talk him out of brainwashing when she was specifically told to kill him if he went rogue. So Shadow thinks that she saved him by not letting Omega kill him. I read "save me," and that's not what comes to mind. And Rouge is an idiot again by asking what's with him in a martyr complex when she knows about Maria and his promise to protect the world. Plus, she should know that he might be feeling survivor guilt because Maria died and he didn't. And she died protecting him. Shadow actually lampshades that every second spent arguing is delaying him. So then why did the writer write all of this without having Shadow fighting the entire time? Then he wouldn't be delayed. He uncharacteristically smiles, saying to her that he'll make it, and she insults him, agreeing, as Black Death still stands there doing nothing. This is not an action scene. What was he in La La Land? Who's talking when the dialogue says that the Dark Arms larva had been loaded onto a shuttle ready for launch? I guess it's Black Death. We should have seen a name on it at least. These larvae getting killed would be common sense to write, because obviously nobody wants a sequel to this arc. Nobody had any reason to care about the Dark Arms as people. I mean, it would be a waste of a concept to have them be destroyed before they could actually be used, but it was already ignoring what the fans wanted to even make a sequel to Shadow the Hedgehog's story arc. Oh my god, this is Shadow the Hedgehog 2. That's the kind of things that fans would joke about Sega announcing as an April Fool's Day prank. Right there with the Sonic and Elise dating simulator, and Sonic and the Seven Dwarfs. What does that mean when Flynn actually wanted to write Shadow the Hedgehog 2, which would be considered equally bad? I think he only did this because it's a comic, and comics are more obscure. Would you think he could get away with this if he was writing a game? Would you think he could get away with just reusing the concept from every other game instead of being original? Generations and Forces only did it because they were anniversary titles, and it wasn't tolerated with Sonic Forces. In all honesty, I want him to be picked to write at least one 3D game, just to see what the hell that'd be like. All the games are guaranteed to have bad stories anyways, so what difference would it make? Maybe then people would finally wake up. And if it's a good story, then at this point, I'm surprised he won't write Sonic 06 2. He was already a third of the way there by having Silver try to go after Sonic to save a doomed future. I think he would have used Mephiles too if he wasn't forbidden from it. And that'd be another third of the way there. This story's so hard to take seriously that I went off on another tangent. The point is, a Shadow the Hedgehog 2? There's a reason Sega would never do this. Even Sega has more sense than him. Eclipse is told that he's not bound to the hive mind, so he has to escape and tend to the Dark Arms. He doesn't agree despite supposedly caring about them more than anything, because he wants to try to disarm the bomb with no idea what to do. Of course he prioritized trying to save all of his people at once. But he's not even being told that other people are busy saving the Dark Arms for him. And I have to assume that this is what Black Death was occupied with while Shadow and Rouge was chatting. Otherwise, it'd be even more ridiculous that Black Death wasn't doing anything, or even noticing, while Shadow was punching him this entire time. Also, the story's making me feel sorry for Eclipse again, when he was just shown to be a complete monster. What does Flynn want? He's either too likable, or too unlikable. Normally, making a villain be sympathetic sometimes is commendable, because it humanizes them. But this guy wants to burn a planet and is fine with the entire planets being destroyed. So why humanize this guy? All we're supposed to do is hate him. I don't think a complete monster who's just a one-dimensional cartoon villain should be eliciting any sympathy from the audience. That sends mixed messages. Suddenly he doesn't stick to what he knows, and that's confusing. And Black Death calls him a bothersome child. So does he love him like a father would? That doesn't explain why he called Black Death Master, but I guess Black Death only realized that he cared about him that much after he told him to call him Master. And maybe he's too shy to just tell him that he thinks of him as his son. If he loves him like a father would, that would explain why he didn't kill him or even punish him for acting with free will. And for once I can compliment this arc on being creative, because unless things change, so far it looks like Eclipse won't betray Black Death and kill him, when the entire arc was doing obvious foreshadowing to that because all he did was bicker. And it's justified because he's too busy with a bomb and isn't with him. We should have seen Rouge hitting the alien with her foot. It's sweet of Black Death to tell the Death Side to attend to Eclipse, because I really thought he'd just leave him to die. But that's kind of the problem, isn't it? I just said, it's sweet of Black Death. Maybe you shouldn't name the character something like that and make him want to do nothing but invade a planet then. If he cares about Eclipse, how? When he doesn't care about anyone else? Does he have an entire family he loves? I don't know. He must have, or he wouldn't have been born. So where are they now? I guess Shadow killed them. If that was the case, he would have called Shadow out on it. And that would have been more effective than just repeating what he said before. Also, what determines which Black Arms are born free of the hive mind and able to control it? Does Black Death come from a long line of Black Arms who are somehow different in biology and able to do that? So the planet was lucky enough to have at least 2 types of intelligent species, and yet he's called a Black Arms anyways. How would Black Death and Black Doom be literally the only Black Arms with free will? My immediate thought when I first saw Black Death in a panel being referred to as leading an invasion on another planet was that I wondered how many other commanders like him are there. But apparently, somehow the only other one than Black Doom. Huh? How would there still be Black Arms that can control all the other ones, if there were only two at some point? Wouldn't that mean the gene pool was extremely small and was constantly thinning for no reason? Who did they mate with, other than superior Black Arms? Where are they now? Wouldn't such an advanced species just use cloning technology and test tube babies and stuff to make sure that the only beings that can control the hive mind wouldn't inevitably die out? Literally everything about the Black Arms is stupid. So even when you give them a chance in spite of their appearance, they are a bad idea. I didn't know the Death Side was that close to Eclipse. Really? He flies with him in the next panel? And Shadow hadn't killed him by this point? Well, it would be too sad if this was the last panel we saw Eclipse in, because he looked sympathetic here. Because he was trying to do something heroic from his perspective by trying to disarm the bomb, even at a risk to himself. If he died because he tried to disarm a bomb, he'd have looked heroic, if misguided because these guys shouldn't be saved. Wait a minute. He has chaos control. He wouldn't be having any trouble with this. Not only would he chaos control away from the Death's Eye, but why doesn't he chaos control warp the bomb to Mobius? Or if chaos control is actually very limited in how far away you can teleport things. Yeah, right, Shadow warped all the way to the Ark from Prison Island in SA2. Still, he could at least teleport the bomb to a region of space away from the Black Comet. Or teleport it so that it's so close to Mobius that it would inevitably crash into it from gravity. Not to mention that chaos control means he can freeze time. Even if he can only freeze time for like 30 seconds, or however long Shadow could do that in the multiplayer. Is there any reason he couldn't just keep freezing time over and over, to give himself all the time he wants? It's never said that in canon, Shadow needs a certain amount of rings to use chaos control, and then he needs to collect more rings to use it again. So he's a complete idiot here. Not only does Flynn mishandle a character with chaos control by even giving Shadow the ability to use it without an emerald, but he did twice as bad by making a second character have that problem. It does make more logical sense that Shadow would be able to use chaos control without an emerald because he's the ultimate life form, but it just makes it all the more obvious that his whole concept was way too overpowered in the first place. Also, whenever I complain about this, I'm giving the continuity the benefit of the doubt and assuming that Sonic and Silver can't use chaos control, or at least are so inexperienced with it that they're really opposed to using it, to the point where they might as well not even have it, when they did have it a few times in the games. And I can only assume that as long as I don't see them using the continuity itself. Provided Flynn will keep this the case, I can at least compliment the comics on not making them that overpowered too. Because there would be absolutely no excuse for the heroes Sonic and Silver not to chaos control to take down Eggman. Silver especially because he thinks about his future, and at least tried to kill Sonic for the good of the future despite being opposed to killing. Well, Sonic would never even consider it. Why didn't he assume Eggman at least in part contributed to his future being terrible, and immediately warp him to prison after he learned he could chaos control? Well, to be fair, the only thing we ever saw him use it for was making a time travel portal. Sonic, on the other hand, has teleported before. At least with Shadow, I can imagine that he's a selfish antisocial dick who just doesn't care enough to bother taking down Eggman. And he's too stupid to think to warp him to prison. That's at least the cynical explanation, and that's better than nothing. I say this because I'm familiar with post-SA2 Shadow much more than that perfect villain that is SA2 Shadow. After his character degradation, like with Rise of Lyric and Generations, I can't imagine him caring enough to take down Eggman. So why did he do that in Flynn's 25 years later? Because we needed a plot. Never mind explaining how he got to Eggman's base to take him down. Shadow could be written to try to explain this away, even if it make him look selfish. He can't spend every day protecting the world from Maria, and the only way he knows how, if he takes down Eggman. Because then what's he gonna do to keep fulfilling her wish? Her wish was so vague, like, for all the people on that planet, give them a chance to be happy. What does that even mean? Let them be happy? Before what? Usually that phrase is used before the word before. So he doesn't really want to remove Eggman from the equation, or else he wouldn't know what to do with the rest of his life for Maria's sake. He wasn't given any other direction than what Gunn and Rouge use him for. I can imagine he'd feel awkward being a charity worker. And that's the only other option to improve the world. And better yet, Shadow's cynical, so maybe you could say that he thinks it's pointless to warp Eggman to prison because he get broken out. And if he was actually the type to kill Eggman, then he would have done so by now already. And it wouldn't just be restrained to purely hypothetical endings in the Shadow game that are supposed to be on the evil path. I have a question. He's obviously fine with trying to kill Black Death here, and he was fine with killing all the Black Arms at the end of his own game. So yeah, him never killing Eggman ever seems forced. If he thinks it's pointless to try to kill Eggman or warp him to prison, then he must only be at Gun to humor Rouge because he thinks there's nothing else to do, because thinking it's pointless would also apply to fighting Eggman. Like destroying his robots, he'll build more. Destroying his factories, who cares? He'll build more of those too. I think being a charity worker might be a bit better for making him feel like he's actually making the world better. Because at least charity work doesn't get completely undone. At least he called the Black Arms mindless monsters. So maybe there is only an exception to the no killing rule for that very reason. Even though Black Death and Eclipse clearly aren't mindless. They're just monsters. And so is Eggman. So he's only fine with killing them because he's racist against Black Arms. Which makes his angsty about whether it's right to kill them all in an earlier issue a lot more confusing. He got over his hatred of humanity and thinking all humans are evil, and then he's the same way with the Black Arms, who granted deserve it, but still. Also, maybe Shadow still thinks he can't use Chaos Control despite not being around Eclipse, because he's still in the Black Comet too, with him. And that's why he won't warp Black Death to the sun, and then instantly warp him and Rouge and Omega to the shuttle, and warp their team home. Anyways, I can't believe they're wasting so many panels on him being dragged to the shuttle. He tells Black Death he was right, and Shadow needs to be destroyed, and it's what he built him for. Why is he... I guess he's saying this to try to convince him to keep him on the comet. But yeah, it's what he built him for. Is he a robot or not? And they're already abandoning one of his two only redeeming traits. Eclipse apparently wants to save his master. I thought he was planning on betraying him. That is a bit more creative, I guess. The shuttle frustratingly gets to take off successfully. Really? What on earth possessed Flynn into doing this? Wasn't it obvious that nobody wanted the Black Arms to survive? That was why he explained why they'd never show up in Archie Sonic. Whatever happened to that writer? I mean, it would be a waste to have the Dark Arms be destroyed before they could do anything, but he didn't have to write the Dark Arms in the first place. Black Death tells Shadow that he's made his peace. That's so vague. And made his peace sounds good, like a good guy thing to say, like the gun commander said he made his peace. And yet he's a monster? At least Shadow the Hedgehog knew what it wanted with Black Doom. It knew Black Doom was supposed to be a pure monster. All Shadow does is say good, instead of not knowing what he's talking about. Or saying, I don't care, you're a bad guy, like he actually would. And he says, now we end this. What was he waiting for? Why did Black Death say that the comet will fall into the planet? Shouldn't he have known what the bomb was for? That wasted panels. If we were just gonna see them throw fire at each other, then it wasn't worth wasting the panels just because we were seeing them do that. Obviously they're gonna miss all their thrown fireballs, so it's kind of padding to even show it. It just doesn't compare to characters actually hitting each other. That's why I could never take the firebending seriously in Avatar, actually. It's just spectacle. Shadow finally uses his Chaos Blast. What took him so long again? What an idiot. We didn't need to be shown Eclipse swearing revenge on Shadow. We needed to see his shuttle fly into the sun. Why did it take Shadow so long to get to the shuttle instead of him running to Rouge instantly, like I naturally assumed? Or warping to her instantly, like anyone would assume? Remember, in SA2, Shadow warped to the Ark with Rouge from Prison Island all the way on the ground. I'm pretty sure this is closer to the shuttle than Prison Island was to the Ark. I think this is the third time he's had a continuity error against the games. He can't even get continuity right when he's writing about something that's close to the games. Omega asks if Rouge knows Shadow's maximum teleport range. Why do they think it has any limit? And Rouge doesn't know. And she says that if he had the Chaos Emerald, it wouldn't matter. How would you not know, by the way? Wouldn't they have done science experiments on him pretty quickly to find out what his maximum teleport range is? Like, wouldn't Gunn have ordered that just to make sure? It is original to give him a maximum teleport range, but it's limiting a character's potential and competence for no apparent reason. It's not destroying the plot hole of why doesn't he warp Eggman and kill him. Either way, he has super speed, he can run really far, and he has super strength. So eventually he's going to be face to face with Eggman anyways in his life, like he should have already. The comet blows up without Shadow getting onto the shuttle, just for a cheap moment of audience manipulation where Rouge cries. Just assuming the ultimate life form didn't teleport away from the comet in time. Only a child would actually think he had the guts to have Shadow not survive this. Realistically, we know that he'd never let him die because he's too scared of the fan backlash, for once. Omega says that his EMP shielding that he apparently has must be faulty, and he's blind. How can anything electronic be immune to EMPs? How'd that come up? This is such blatant padding. Also, it doesn't matter that he's blind here. Well, first off, he's a robot, he can be repaired. Second, I think this is the first time we've been told that he's been blinded. So, it could have created tension earlier, I guess, but even then, he was being led around by everybody. And even if he had to shoot something, he would have been told where exactly to face. So it doesn't matter. Like, maybe being blinded could have worked to make things tense for Shadow. Finally, Shadow reunites with Rouge. She's happy at first, only to yell at him for waiting so long. And Omega uncharacteristically holds her back from attacking him. Shadow coughs and says he somehow couldn't teleport far enough, despite being a being of chaos energy completely infused with chaos energy, who can even teleport without an emerald in the first place. So he's overpowered compared to the games, and yet he's not as overpowered. But at least he tried to balance things. Still doesn't explain why he didn't teleport Black Death into the vacuum of space immediately. Anyways, he used the decompression from the shuttle's entry point to fling him into range after diving face first into the vacuum of space unprotected. Which, to be fair, isn't a guaranteed instant death. And I like that Rouge is confirming that no Sonic X, the Sonic characters cannot breathe in space. Because even the ultimate life form isn't assumed to be able to do that. But I still think this is really stupid. Anytime you write a character surviving the vacuum of space, that's a pretty big risk. There's a pretty big risk that your audience is going to think it was stupid, and you were stupid for writing it. Because he somehow manages to survive at the end. It would have been better just have him keep it simple and have him teleport to Rouge at that point. There's never any sort of hint that Shadow had a limited range in his teleporting. And what range it does have, which is never clearly defined anyways, so what's the point? It's just whatever the plot demands anyways. What range it does have should still be more than enough for him to kill every villain in one hit. He could teleport them to under the ground so that they get telefragged and die. Why didn't he just warp to the shuttle before it even take off? How'd they forget he had sonic speed? Like, he could have warped Black Death to under the ground of the Black Comet and killed him instantly with telefragging, if he's okay with killing him. And how did Shadow, I guess his magical black arm sensing power, detected that Eclipse is still out there? Then we see Knuckles sense faint energy in a general direction as we see him at Skyrail Zone. Is that on Angel Island? Why is he there if he's like the games? Will Skyrail Zone actually factor into the plot, or just be a name and aesthetic again? Because the shitty Return to Angel Island arc did use game settings. It's very easy to forget because it never did anything with the settings that required them specifically, aside from them calling attention to the supersonic mural. Plus the art sucked so much that you wanted to repress your memory of the whole story anyways. But yeah, they used Lava Reef Zone, and Knuckles was mentioned to have his tomb in Sky Sanctuary Zone. And the confrontation with General Cage was in Death Chamber. But it doesn't matter because it's not like they needed to find 3 keys shaped like Eggman's head to get there after wandering around chambers with different colors. The heroes never got threatened by any lava, and the tomb could have been anywhere. And that was all before Ian Flynn. Also, Sunset Hill from Sonic Advance 3 was stated to be a knothole and was the location of Mina's concert. And it didn't matter either. At that point, it's both pandering and lazy if you're not going to do anything with the setting that requires it. So I hope things change for the reboot, because if they don't, saying it's a game location will be just as pointless and forgettable as using an original location, because it's not using a game location. It's just that he's too lazy to call it a new name. I mean, Knuckles can't grind on rails unless it's Sonic Heroes. So how could Knuckles possibly take advantage of Sky Rail Zone? Also, it wasn't called Zone in the games, so he's classic Sonicifying it for no reason. He didn't call Station Square Zone. Zone is just a meaningless word when it's used to refer to an area, because it's not defined how big a zone has to be. But zone sounds much better than area. Sure, Fleetway used zone a lot too, but it was made almost entirely during the classic era, so that made more sense, rather than being behind the times for nostalgia. Anyways, I can't help but be annoyed that Knuckles is focusing on energy, implying that he'll once again have to look for the Master Emerald shards. That idea has been done to death. Is he so uncreative that this is all he can think of as an excuse to use Knuckles? Knuckles going after Chaos Energy? Penrose never did this because he knew how to think of creative new plots for Knuckles to be in. He never relied on the games as a crutch. I get that Knuckles is only supposed to be the guardian of the Master Emerald, but he could have it be guarded by a robot, or someone more reliable than him while he's gone. At least someone that has a ray gun. He thinks that he hates leaving the island, even if he's got her looking after it. Who's her? It can't be Julie Sue, because Archie's too cheap for that. It can't be Charmy's girlfriend, because Archie's also too cheap for that. So he shouldn't be saying her. He sees a shooting star, except it's actually Eclipse's shuttle. And Knuckles is a good audience surrogate thinking that it better not land on his island. I'm sure it will though. What made him think we wanted to see more of Eclipse the Darkling? What a creator's pet OC. He's not a really nice, sympathetic guy. And he's also not cool and badass. Not compared to Shadow, not even by a long shot. Shadow has so many more abilities. Shadow is so much more competent than he is. This issue is by Ian Flynn, and was about Shadow taking an eternity to kill Black Death without remorse, when there's no reason he couldn't have Chaos blasted him without inhibitor rings instantly. Not to mention, Chaos controlled him to death. Also, I immediately assumed when he took off his inhibitor rings that there would be consequences to this, because he'd be really exhausted and passed out afterwards. But if he did, apparently he wouldn't have had the time to escape the comet before it blew up, because he took so long. Then don't write him as taking off his inhibitor rings, just have him kill him instantly. Even Sonic X made more sense than this. And Sonic 06 made the same mistake, because it's not like after Shadow beat all the Mephiles clones, he passed out and was lying on the floor when the scene showed him again. And him coughing here wasn't enough. He only did that because somehow he now has a teleportation range limit. And despite his sonic speed, he just barely missed the space shuttle. Wasn't it obvious that he had to take off his inhibitor rings to increase the range on his teleportation? And so the range would be much bigger than this? That'd make more sense than him diving into space and hoping he got lucky. Anyways, why did he make sure Eclipse survived? I mean, he didn't do enough with the character, but I don't want to see him again. He looks terrible. And I don't know whether to hate him or like him. To be fair though, I'm excited to see what'll come of this. We've never seen the Black Arms in a context outside of the Black Comet, or all of them are invading the planet all at once before. Now they're a lot more in a minority underdog role. But who was asking for the Black Arms to survive? Who was asking for them to come back at all? The bare minimum I expect from a new story arc is a new story. And the reboot is such an inexcusable nadir of creativity that I can't even get that. We've already seen that concept of evil twins before. We've already seen the Ultimate Life Form before. We've already seen the Black Comet and Black Arms before. We've already seen the Gun Commander not liking Shadow and wanting him dead before. And somehow I still have faith and assume that the next universe arc will be interesting and original. Although I'm sure it'll rip off Pumpkin Hill's treasure hunting, because I remember hearing about that. I remember hearing about the narration quoting a rap song from Pumpkin Hill. You'd think it'd be common sense to have him treasure hunt literally anywhere but a place he already treasure hunted in before. How is a retread not immediately seen as boring? The biggest problem with this issue, aside from the lack of creativity, was that talking is a free action here. As if the filler wasn't bad enough, Eclipse was humiliated because he was a complete idiot, and too often him and Black Death just wasted time talking instead of fighting. This whole arc has that problem. Why didn't Eclipse focus entirely on Rouge if he must have heard she was going to activate the bomb? Omega should have been drawn holding him still. Everyone looked like an idiot, and it was confusing that the writer wasted time giving one-dimensional racist monsters who want to destroy all of humanity some sympathetic moments that humanized them, where it turned out they cared about each other after all. But they only care about other monsters. I hate being confused about whether I hate or like a character.